Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. Let's try to get through the saga of the Mike Flynn case because there have been some developments in recent days. But hold on tight because at this point, the case has more twists and turns than Lombard Street in San Francisco. First of all, we know that in 2016, Russia interfered in our presidential election to try to help get Donald Trump elected. Our intelligence community reached high confidence determination that Russia interfered, and accordingly, President Obama took bold action and imposed sanctions on Russia, our adversary, to punish them for unlawfully interfering in our election. Mike Flynn, private citizen at this point, starts having phone conversations with the Russian ambassador, Sergei Kislyak. He tells Kislyak to have Russia either do things or decline to do things that are inconsistent with then existing U.S. policy toward Russia, our adversary. In fact, Mike Flynn is caught saying to Ambassador Kislyak, "We are not going to let the Obama administration box us in." That's from Mike Flynn, private citizen. Mike Flynn then goes on this campaign of lies. He tells a number of people in the Trump administration that he had no such conversations with Ambassador Kislyak. He tells KT McFarland that, and she, in turn, tells that lie to the media. He tells Sean Spicer that, and he, in turn, tells that lie to the American people. He tells Vice President Pence that lie. He tells the FBI that lie, flat out lie, plain and simple. And when you review the information that's been released about the FBI interview of Mike Flynn lied to the FBI over and over and over again in that interview. And then Mike Flynn ultimately walked into court, pleaded guilty in front of two judges, affirmed his guilty plea multiple times, under oath, admitted he was guilty of lying to the FBI. In fact, Donald Trump did one of the few sensible things in the past 3.5 years. He fired Mike Flynn because he lied to the vice president and the FBI and others, and he was untrustworthy. So then, Mike Flynn walks into court, and it's a sentencing hearing. Judge Sullivan starts laying into Mike Flynn. He says, "You, sir, arguably disgraced everything the flag stands for. You, sir, arguably sold out your country." I was in court that day, and I got patriotic goosebumps. He then said, "And you, sir, if you go to sentencing today, I will not guarantee you a non-custodial sentence. In other words, you may be turning in your belt and your shoelaces to the U.S. Marshals and heading over to the D.C. jail." At which point, Mike Flynn said, I'm not ready to go to sentencing yet. So he puts off his sentencing to a future date. And now, here's where it gets weird. Yes, here is where it gets weird. Mike Flynn fires his defense team and hires a bunch of Fox News type lawyers. Those lawyers start making noises about, we don't think Mike Flynn is guilty, and we don't think Mike Flynn should have pleaded guilty, and we're going to try to undo Mike Flynn's guilty plea. Well, listen, I was a prosecutor for 30 years. Ain't no undoing a guilty plea like that when he's clearly guilty, when all the evidence proves he's guilty, when he has affirmed his guilt to two judges several times. And then something happened that I didn't think I would see in my lifetime. The Department of Justice, headed up by Bill Barr, abdicated its role as the prosecutor, walked away from its responsibility as the prosecutor, and Bill Barr walked over to the Mike Flynn defense side and sat down with the defense team and said, yeah, let's go ahead and dismiss this case against Mike Flynn. Judge Sullivan said, well, wait a minute. There's supposed to be a prosecutor in the case. Somebody is supposed to represent the interests of we the people. It's the United States versus Mike Flynn, and as of right now, everybody, including Bill Barr, is on Mike Flynn's side, and nobody's on the people's side. So Judge Sullivan, in essence, appoints a special prosecutor because the people are not going to go unrepresented. That is insane. And he appoints somebody named John Gleeson. John Gleeson, a former federal prosecutor in New York who prosecuted John Gotti, took down the mob, who then went on to become a federal judge in New York for 22 years. Judge Sullivan appointed John Gleeson to basically be the voice of the people and argue why Bill Barr should not be allowed to dismiss this guilty plea, because Mike Flynn is really, really guilty. So the weirdness continues, because at that point, Mike Flynn's defense team files this really extraordinary petition to the appellate court. It's called a petition for a writ of mandamus. And Mike Flynn's lawyers ask the appellate court to direct Judge Sullivan to dismiss Mike Flynn's case. And a writ of mandamus, folks, is when a judge is acting unlawfully, when a judge is failing to abide by a clear legal duty he has. And what Judge Sullivan is doing is actually abiding by a clear legal duty he has, because when the prosecution moves to dismiss a case, Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 48A says a judge has to decide that issue. The judge can grant the motion to dismiss, the judge can deny the motion to dismiss, but the judge has to exercise his or her discretion. And that's exactly what Judge Sullivan is doing. So he's not failing to follow a clear legal duty, he's following a clear legal duty. But still, Mike Flynn's lawyers tell the appellate court, order Judge Sullivan to dismiss this case because he's violating a clear legal duty. Well, that's nonsense. The appellate court should have said, Mike Flynn's lawyers, that's nonsense. Instead, here comes some more weirdness. The appellate court says to Judge Sullivan, Judge Sullivan, we would like you to personally respond to Mike Flynn's lawyer's request that we order you to dismiss the case. Wait a minute. Appellate courts don't order judges to respond. The judge is not a party to the case. The judge is not the defense attorney. The judge is not the prosecutor. But there you go. Even though the appellate court should have summarily thrown it out, instead they order Judge Sullivan to respond personally. Judge Sullivan said, okay, you want to kind of make me sort of a party? I'm going to get a lawyer. And he hires Beth Wilkinson, and she's the one who files the reply up to the appellate court on behalf of Judge Sullivan. Yeah, I told you. Weird. Twists and turns. Unlike anything I've seen in my 30 years as a prosecutor. While we are waiting for the appellate court to do its thing, here comes former Judge John Gleeson, Special Prosecutor, voice of the people. And he files his pleading in the case because he dug into this thing that Bill Barr is trying to pull off. And here is what former Judge Gleeson, representing the people's interests now in this prosecution, tells the court and tells us all in his public filing. Quote, the court should deny leave to dismiss Mike Flynn's case. In other words, the court should deny Bill Barr's motion, now that he's on the side of Mike Flynn, should deny Bill Barr's motion to dismiss Mike Flynn's case because there is clear evidence of a gross abuse of prosecutorial power. Rule 48A I mentioned a moment ago, was designed to guard against dubious dismissals of criminal cases that would benefit powerful and well-connected defendants. Sound familiar? Rule 48 was designed to guard against dubious dismissals of criminal cases that would benefit powerful and well-connected defendants. In other words, former Judge Gleeson continues, the rule empowers courts to protect the integrity of their own proceedings from prosecutors who would undertake corrupt, politically motivated dismissals. That is what happened here. Close quote. You catch that? The rule is designed to protect the integrity of the proceedings from prosecutors, Bill Barr, who would undertake corrupt, politically motivated dismissals like what happened here. Well, I am glad John Gleeson spoke on behalf of we the people, because at least we are now represented. At least the people now have a dog in the fight and have a say in how this case ought to come out. Not by Bill Barr tanking it on behalf of a powerful, connected defendant, connected to the president. Folks, justice is coming in this case one way or another. Because if Judge Sullivan denies Mike Flynn, Bill Barr's motion to dismiss this case, then he will sentence Mike Flynn to prison, I predict. If he finds himself having to grant this corrupt motion to dismiss, then Mike Flynn will be prosecuted in January, I predict, when we have a law-abiding president and a law-enforcing attorney general again at the helm. And then Mike Flynn can be prosecuted for all his crimes, not just the one lie he told to the FBI that he pled guilty to. One way or another, folks, justice will win out. Justice matters. Bill Barr will not be permitted to tear down our Department of Justice and our allegiance to the rule of law. As always, folks, please stay safe. And I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.